It's a great quote. Hair looks great. It's good to have Joe Burrow back. Greg, do you think there's any chance that we've seen the best of Joe Burrow because of the accumulation of injuries?
No, I don't think there's any chance we've seen the best of Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow is committed and he's saying he's addicted to getting better, then that entails him health-wise, not just what we see on the football field. So when I listen to Joe Burrow, I know what he can do on the football field. It's a matter of, can you consistently stay healthy to elevate the level of play around you? We know we've seen him do it, but we've also seen Patrick Mahomes first time out, 50 touchdowns. Did he peak? No. Statistically, we don't know if he'll get back to that, but he's evolved into such a dynamic player. He always makes the guys around him better and improves their situation. That's what because he's available. That's what Joe Burrow has to show. Not only us, but those guys in that locker room, that I will be available because he has now been injured 2 of his 4 seasons, and there's significant injuries.
And they're all over different parts of the body, right? You've dealt with the calf, you've dealt with the knee, you've now dealt with the wrist of his throwing hand, which is the concern. Go ahead.
Look, I love Joe Burrow. Fellow Ohio boy.
Yes, that's right. Ohio
love that.
Mafia
I love that he went to the Bengals, right? Remember, everybody was saying, don't go, don't go. Sure. He not only went there, but turned them around completely. Now they're a contender. So I love what he's about, the swagger, all that. But, Greg, I disagree. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible because obviously it's all about the injuries. But the injuries are strange. The calf injury last year, he's just rolling out in practice. All right? And then the wrist, where'd that kind of come from? Seemingly a mystery, right? He just seemed, there are some guys in all sports that, for whatever reason, physically seem to have a bunch of injuries. We talk about Anthony Davis and guys like that in the NBA. He seems like he may be one of those guys. And if you look at his last 3 years, he has declined. All of these, completion percentage, yards per pass, TD percentage. I could also have yards per game up there. Passer rating. They've all declined over his last 3 years, healthy or not. And so, we've seen it with Carson Palmer, with Andrew Luck. I mean, I know he retired early, but
I think it's a legitimate worry for a number of reasons. So Brew's point about them being strange, also them, if people probably don't quite remember this now, but after he hurt his wrist, there was then the weird video of him wearing the splint or wrap on the wrist beforehand, and then the Bengals were like, nope, total coincidence, had nothing to do with it. He wears that because he's flying on an airplane, that stuff. But the very specifics of this injury, so Dr. Jesse Morse, who's not a fake internet doctor, a real doctor, but who has a public following, wrote about it and said this specific type of injury makes dart throwers' motion, meaning this, very difficult to do, which is he writes, is the follow through for a quarterback. And then this is the part that concerned me. Joe Burrow's the only professional quarterback that they have ever seen documented with this specific injury. So that then does throw things into question, and it also, and I hate to try to reiterate the point from last year, but puts me, the other reason I worry about Joe Burrow is because I think I sometimes more worried about him than the Bengals. Because the Bengals let him go out there the first month of the year when he couldn't roll out, when he couldn't move around, you know what I mean? And to me, put him in more jeopardy. And so when you add that to the fact that he is probably not going to have more talent around him moving forward than he did right when he came into the league, how successful he was right when he came into the league. Do I think it's in play that second year when he led the NFL in yards per attempt, had a 108 rating, led the NFL in completion percentage, and they went to the Super Bowl, that's the best it ever gets? Of course I think it's in play. I think it would suck and be sad, but of course I think that's in play.
So I think we're on the same page as it pertains to him being injured. If he continues to go down this road of injury, then possibly. However, if you're saying what you just said, those stats, those numbers that you just read off, if Joe Burrow is healthy version of Joe Burrow, we've seen the peak of Joe Burrow?
I think that it is in play that even if he is healthy, he is not physically as able as he was before the injuries, and that the numbers come down when T. Higgins inevitably leaves, when those things, like I do think that's absolutely on the board. I think Joe Burrow was, you guys know this, I was one of the only people arguing he's the second best quarterback in football, not Josh Allen. I have massive respect for the guy. I think he's a great player. I just think that there are a lot of concerning signs, and an injury to your throwing wrist.
Right.
Now, listen, Purdy had the injury to his throwing elbow and just had a great year, so I'm not acting like it's a death knell, but I think it is highly concerning. Highly concerning.
And I get that he was banged up, but last year he didn't look great. And now how much of that was just the injury, or was he fully healthy in some of those games, and just didn't play well?
All right, let's take a look at the odds to win the AFC. Number one, of course, the team that's won the AFC 4 of the last 5 years, won 3 of the last 5 Super Bowls, and is a budgeting dynasty. Then there's the Ravens. The Bengals and Bills are tied for third, and the Houston Texans are at plus 850 in fifth. Brew, who is most likely, if there is going to be a team to dethrone the Chiefs this season, who's most likely to do it in the AFC?
I do think Houston should be higher on that list, but my answer is Baltimore. Same as it was last year, because obviously they got Derrick Henry, and as good as their run game always is, it's going to be better with him. I think, Greg, he's going to open things up for Lamar's running, but also his passing. I mean, you are going to have to now worry about Derrick Henry. And I also think that they learned from that AFC Championship game. Be who you are. Do you. All right? Run the football. They stopped doing it. Lamar, I don't know if he was trying to prove something last season, and obviously he was MVP, but trying to prove that he can be more of a pocket passer. I think this year they're just going to play to their strengths. And defensively, I know they lost some guys, but their culture is defense. Defense and running the football, and I think they're going to play to that. So, yeah, I got Baltimore.
You mentioned Houston needing to move up. They need to move all the way up, because this is the team that I feel like that can dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs. When you look at this team and what they were able to do with the rookie quarterback last season, rookie head coach, and missing pieces. Defensively, they struggled a bit, but they had the Rookie of the Year. Offensively, you had the Rookie of the Year. Those two pieces are in their second year, heading into their second year, coming back. You then address pass rushing. You get a couple of defensive ends. You get a linebacker. You get an added receiver in Stephon Diggs. You get Tank Dell back. You add all these pieces. You get an offensive lineman to support and to protect your greatest asset. Why would I believe anything different than the Texans are the favorite to uproot the Kansas City Chiefs?
So Houston was also my answer. So, and I'll add one other thing. They're also, in my opinion, far and away the team on that list most likely, if anyone's going to have a better record than the Chiefs, to where they have the home field because of the division.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like Cincinnati, I'm not saying that necessarily Houston would head-to-head be better than Cincinnati or better than Baltimore, but I think the difference between Cincinnati or Baltimore in the playoffs having to go to Kansas City, I know Joe Burrow won in Kansas City once, rather in Houston being able to host that game because they have the best record, and also, like, there's only been 2 archetypes to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs with Mahomes. Employ Tom Brady, or how the Bengals did it, which was some similarities here. Stud quarterback in year 2 with a loaded team around him, and that's what the Texans really are going for it. The Diggs trade signified that, some of their offseason moves, bringing in Danielle Hunter, and so and the Chiefs, to be fair, we don't know any of the details of it, but there's an investigation right now into whether or not Rashee Rice did something else this offseason. If that investigation turns into something more than just investigation, where there's charges, then he's looking at potentially a lengthy suspension.
Yes.
And so if there were to be a team that would be able to knock them off, I think the youth of Houston, and I don't know where you guys stand on this, I also think there is a benefit to C.J. Stroud never having been beaten by Mahomes. Like, I think everyone else on that list, the last playoff game they played in was ended by Patrick Mahomes. Lamar, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, all of them, their most recent experience in the playoffs, they're walking off sad. Patrick Mahomes walking off celebrating. So I wonder if that plays
a valid
Houston's
point.
favor.
That's a valid point. When you're going up against a team or a player that is deemed the best, the greatest, the GOAT, all the things, but you haven't had your shot at them, that wasn't me. That was against all those guys. So you're right. C.J. Stroud is thinking like, yeah, I can take him down.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.